Welcome to today's Iris session brought to you by BrightRock. BrightRock is a financial services provider operating in the life insurance market. Its interest in change and how it affects people derives from the fact that its life insurance offering is uniquely structured to change at times like these. So, why am I telling you this? Well, because BrightRock started the Change Exchange, an online resource center that provides people with a safe space to ask questions, share knowledge, and access tools to help them cope with life's biggest change moments. There are times when everything from one's sense of identity to one's personal finances is challenged, like when you start a new job or start your own business, for example. I'm David O'Sullivan, and today we're here to talk about finding joy in your job. When it comes to career choices, not all of us are lucky enough to have pursued passions that pay the bills. Many of us have no other choice but to settle for second best. So, how should you cope with an unamazing job when you're not saving the world, but at least it's a means to an end? Should you find joy in the mediocre, or should you move on? And if so, when and how will you know that it's time? Well, I have three guests with me in the studio to chat about this. We'll also be taking your questions on our Google Hangout. Just click on the side of the screen, post a question, and we'll put it to the panel. I'm delighted to welcome our guests. First of all, we've got Catherine Constantinides with us. Now, Catherine, when I look at this CV of yours, there is so much. A former Miss Earth, and I think so many people know you from that, but there's so much more that you do. You're the Archbishop Tutu African Oxford Fellow, women entrepreneur, you're involved with Lead SA, you're an executive there. How do you describe what you do?
You know, I think I'm very passionate about what I do. I describe what I do as I'm an active citizen who is passionate about climate change, the environment, sustainability, and the development of Africa.
Well, I'm sure that keeps you busy, but it's a lot of things that you keep. You've got a lot of balls in the air, haven't you? You're juggling a lot of balls.
I've got so many balls in the air all of the time because I feed off of the energy I get in those different spaces. And for me, that's an important thing. Okay,
well, we're going to explore that in a bit more detail. A man I've encountered before in the most beautiful of apartments at the top of Ponty is Loopy Luptak. Loopy, now, the great thing about you is if you look at this picture, and I said to anybody, what did he initially do for a career? Nobody would say chartered accountancy.
Yeah,
because you just don't fit that mold at all. Chartered accountants have a certain look. They come out of a certain mold, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually pretty stoked that you said that, because then my transformation is quite complete then,
yes.
Isn't it?
No, it's very much the case. But you gave up being a chartered accountant at Ernst & Young, or EY as it's now called.
Yes.
How long ago was that?
That was at the end of September 2012.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been doing the full-time thing now on my own for about 3 years.
Now, what's the thing? How do you describe what you do?
Well, I'm a social entrepreneur. We've got an amazing organization at one of the most iconic and notorious buildings in Johannesburg, where we kind of, we explore kids in their kind of ways and means of being kids. So we realized how important it was for us to be kids, you know, growing up, swimming around or playing games or reading books and whatever. So we created a space at the bottom of a building that's got a very horrible reputation in terms of the CBD's reputation. And we're trying to turn it around a little bit, but by, you know, creating an exposure platform for a whole bunch of kids to be kids and to be exposed to the things that we were exposed to. And what we do as well is we're not reliant on any donor funding or government funding or anything like that. So we're a true social enterprise in its truest form by the fact that we take people on exciting and adventurous experiences into the inner city to kind of challenge their perspective in a way that will kind of derive their own opinions about the city, as opposed to the media and South Africans perpetuating all this horrible stuff about us, about our city and our country. So we're just trying to kind of offer a very fresh, optimistic view on our city and the social capital that we have and that kind of stuff.
Well, the building you're talking about is one of the most iconic, and also, as you say, notorious. Ponty. It was known as the biggest whorehouse. It was known as the biggest slum. And it is far from that now. How many people do you think still believe that this is a notorious building?
Many.
I don't know if its notoriety is, I would hope, fading.
Yes, definitely. Look, I think Ponty's story is probably one of the most beautiful that the country has to offer. It kind of encapsulates what South Africa, you know, what it means to be South African and these journeys that we take on as people of this country. So, you know, in the 70s, it was built as an icon of decadence for some of the most affluent people in Johannesburg. Then it went to being the poster child for urban decay, and now it's become this kind of this poster child, or almost this place for hope and, like, you know, in all these neglected areas, you know, that's kind of pushing the city into a great urban form and doing all these wonderful things. So that story of undulation and resilience is what we cling to, you know, as like South Africans. You know, this hope story is quite...
Yeah, you've got such fire in your belly. So to talk to you about finding joy in a job, I think you've got a lot of lessons for us. We'll explore those in more detail. Our final guest, a person who's been on the Google Hangout with BrightRock before, Trudy Makhaya. Welcome to you, Trudy. I'm going to introduce you as well. I could call you an economist, but you are the CEO of Makhaya Advisory. What do you do?
So it's a range of activities. It is a portfolio. So I've got Makhaya Advisory, which is a research firm in the economic space. So looking at economic policy, competition policy, entrepreneurship. Most of my clients either want research done and they don't want to do it in-house, or they dealing with regulatory processes and they want to understand economic policy and regulation. At the same time, I also have other activities that are related to that feed off that. So I write a column for Business Day every 2 weeks. So I delve in a range of issues, all kind of related to the economy. But, you know, I mean, I reflect on where Italy's going. I talk about our culture of entrepreneurship. I look at, you know, the usual concerns of economists, monetary policy, fiscal policy. So just a range of topics. And I also try to engage just in public debate on the economy.
Yes.
So I also do a lot of commentary for ENCA, where I'm a resident economic analyst. So that also kind of keeps me in the analytical space, but also creative, you know, thinking about ways to engage with the media, writing, communicating. So it's a wide
There's
portfolio.
a lot of stuff you do. So there's quite a media profile that you've got in terms of the television and the writing that you do. Now, let's face it, you came from the Competition Commission. You were a commissioner there at one stage, weren't you?
I was. I mean, when I left the commission about over a year ago, I was deputy commissioner. So very, you know, official, very serious, you know, office-bound kind of job. And it's a big change to be on your own, independent, outside institutional structures, outside the confines of government. I mean, I love whatever I do, you know, I still get 3 quotes for everything, like a good civil servant.
Very good.
So still PFMA still in my head, but you know, those structures, etc., are not necessarily still a part of my life anymore. I think being in a small entrepreneurial firm, I work alone most of the time and I draw people in. So there isn't the issue of people reporting to you as it was in the commission. I'm not responsible for a whole division. It's quite a different way. I mean, my days run very differently from when I was at the commission.
I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to come back to the Trudy, about why it is that you left the commission, and was there a lot of soul searching? The same with you, Loopy, about leaving EY. But let me start with you, Katherine. And I'm sure that Miss Earth gave you an enormous profile and allowed you, well, I'm presuming, allowed you to look for career paths. What were the issues that guided you when you, in order to decide what you wanted to do with your life?
When I was 16, there were I was doing a lot of work in the community. At 16, I decided to start my company, which I did.
At 16, I beg your pardon?
Yes,
really?
At 16. So I've worked for a very long time, but I started working while I was at school. I set up a company. I started getting clients specifically around branding and marketing and PR, and started doing events, etc. So at a young age, I firstly learned to lie about my age, because 16 was very young, but people didn't realize I was that young. And I was doing what I was passionate about, and I was finding ways to fundraise for the community projects I was doing and the humanitarian work I was doing through my company, even though I was still at school. When I left school and I started studying, I went and I studied law and anthropology, but for many reasons, I had to be on a bursary. I couldn't afford to study, and the bursary was taken away because the bursary was meant for a specific male, and I was not that male.
No.
And in the second year, I lost my bursary at Wits, and I decided that I had to continue working and building my social enterprise in order to do everything I wanted to do, but finding a way to do it without the means of a a degree. And that for me was a difficult thing.
I would imagine that would be difficult because we so often have our lives mapped out for us that we have to finish school, get tertiary education, and only then can we think about a career. You didn't do it that way. Obviously, there was a part of you that said you had to go and get a tertiary education,
Yes.
and you embarked on it. When you realized that wasn't going to happen, was it traumatic? Was it difficult? Though you'd come from this background of being 16 years old and being an entrepreneur, were you comfortable that you had a rather large safety net?
Yes, I was, but I carried a large chip on my shoulder for a long time because you sort of, like you said, you map out this idea, you know what you're going to do, you're going to study, these are sort of the stepping stones to where you want to go, and that carpet is pulled from under you without you even realizing that's going to happen. So it was a really hard knock. However, I realized I had to invest myself into my company and what I had been doing for the last 3 years. And looking back over the past 10 years, I realized that I've achieved more than I would have with 5 degrees. I've been able to see parts of the world and work in different parts of the world. I've lived and worked in Cambodia. I've lived and worked in different parts of the continent. And I've been able to do so much more than what I would have done if I did study.
You think you would have been pigeonholed had you studied? Your career would have gone in a different direction?
I think very, very likely it could have gone in a different direction. However, I think that there's a certain bravery and courage in people. And even though you map out a path, that path's not going to sort of turn out the way you think it will, because there's certain callings and passions that you have to, at some point, allow yourself to open up to, and you have to go in that direction.
Now, Loopy, you're nodding away there. I'm curious to know from you when it was that sitting at EY, you went, this is not me. This isn't a good fit for me. Clearly, it isn't a good fit. I spent 2 years sitting at a law firm thinking, what on earth am I doing here? But because I'd studied, I thought, well, I have to see this out. But I was a square peg in a round hole. You would have been the squarest peg in a round hole at EY. What was it like for you realizing I can't do this?
Okay, look, I first realized that, a tertiary education is one of the most important things, and not just particularly around the knowledge that you gain from doing a degree or from becoming a CA, but more your commitment to perseverance and finishing something, because that's really what your employer hires you for. A lot of the stuff that I was doing in my previous job, you kind of learnt on the spot, you learnt a lot on the ground, that kind of stuff. But what really got to me was the fact that I wanted more control over my time and where it went, as opposed to how much money I was going to be earning. So, I only learned this probably this year, but I firmly believe that it's your choice to suffer, because at the end of the day, if you are the one that signs an employment contract, and when you come to a bar on a Saturday and you're chilling with your chums and you're having a discussion around the fire about how crap traffic is, you signed that letter of employment. It was your choice at the end of the day. I know I'm pretty lucky because I don't really have a family now and I'm not married, so I can take risks.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the most important things. But I suppose the defining moment at EY was when I sat down and I said, is this going to be it for the rest of my life? And am I going to be involved in this like political backstabbing to get up this ladder that everyone dreams of getting up to the top of? And it's like this hierarchy structure and authoritarian culture of leadership I didn't really agree with. I was more into collective energy and getting people involved and playing on their strengths. Like for me, I was particularly good with people. I had a personality that came to the forefront, but I was kind of trapped behind a desk, just doing the same old stuff. And I just wanted, I really wanted to be in control of what was going to happen, after I go. Am I going to leave a lasting impact with the work that I do, or am I just going to do it for someone else that has no real things, because when you die at some stage, you can't take everything you've earned with you.
Yes.
But you can take the lessons that you've learned with you,
Was it an important time? Do you ever look back at EY and think, well, what was that all about?
Absolutely. I think through my journey through academics at university, that was very crucial. Going to EY taught me a lot as well. But I think taking this leap of faith into uncertainty, into like entrepreneurship, was probably, I learned more in the last 2 or 3 years doing this than I ever have in university or anything, because there's no book out there that tells you how to deal with staff disputes, or your staff member phones you and says, look, I'm in jail.
Yes.
You know, what are you going to do? Like, you know, there's no, that's why what Catherine's saying is 100% correct, you know, in terms of, you know, taking these, there's no set path in like what's going to happen, you know, there's no set path. And I suppose that's probably the beauty. I mean, for me, the beauty in life happens when you throw yourself into positions of uncertainty. And it's difficult to explain that to people because the only way that you really know is when you do it yourself. It's fair enough saying it and doing it and whatever, you know. But if you have a conversation with someone, you know, like it's difficult to get that point across because everything that's beautiful in life, I think, comes from a place of dark sadness and like, you know, uncertainty and things like that. And it truly defines us as humans, you know, like for me, the journey of personal development that I've taken over the last 2 years is absolutely priceless.
Were you looking for an escape from this world that you were living in? Because the story of you getting involved with Ponte and the children and the rejuvenation and changing people's perception about the inner city, it happened quite quickly. Tell us that story. What happened?
Well, look, my business partner, Nicholas Bauer, who Trudy knows, I'm sure from ETV News, he moved into the building looking for a story for the newspaper. At the time, he was
with the Mail and Guardian. Yeah.
Yes. And he came there, he came to the building and he realized that the whole thing was being redone inside. So instead of leaving with a story, he left with like a signed lease.
That's right.
To occupy the apartment. So a week later, I went to his housewarming. I immediately fell in love. And then I moved in as well to the apartment above his. And then there was a lot of retail space downstairs. We identified the opportunity and we opened an arcade, as simple as that.
Were you still with EY at the time?
I was still with EY. So it was a part-time gig at the time. That's why we opened the arcade, because we wanted something that didn't have a lot of managerial involvement, that you could put people into the store, it could run on its own, it was highly autonomous. And that was the kind of thing that we were going for. And little did we know that, like, what kind of monster we had created, you know, to the point where now it's an educational platform, and it's got, like, you know, internet, and it's got a library, it's got a stage for performing art on top of the experiences that we do as well. So my story came with being very curious and being, you know, incredibly adventurous by saying, you know, like, I was always one of those people where you said, like, you mustn't do this. I did it, you know, just to see for myself. So yeah. People told me my whole life that building was filled with, you know, the corridors were littered with needles and there was prostitutes and gangsters everywhere. I wanted to go and see for myself, and it was completely the opposite.
If the theme of today's discussion then is finding joy in your job, at what stage did you say that old job is not there's no joy, here's the joy? Was it a blinding moment or a gradual process?
I think it was a culmination of a lot of things, particularly around EY. We had this thing called an unassigned register. So we weren't responsible for finding work that the entity would give to us. We would just get handed down the work. And when there were quiet times, we had to sign this stupid thing. It was like ridiculous. Something around signing a book, and then you're allowed to sit and do whatever you like. But you had to be in the office. And that drove me incredibly mad. You know, like, if you want to create culture in a company about something, give your employees a little bit of freedom to discover their own things, you know. So that was one of the things. I couldn't stand doing nothing at the office, you know. And then obviously Ponte was so exciting because, like, people were filming movies there and we were getting international exposure. And it just seemed like organically, it felt like the gut decision came from deep within to be like, okay, let's go and do this. Because I had no idea. To be quite honest with you, the first 24 months of working for myself, I earned probably about a third of what I earned in articles at Ernst & Young.
And that's no money at all.
That's no money at all. So that was, for me, the big thing, the financial thing. If I was going to have a career in money, I would have pursued consulting, and I would have gone the audit route, and I would have done that whole thing. If I wanted to pursue a passionate career, I believe that money will always become a consequence of doing what you love.
But it's interesting, you didn't allow yourself to become the slave to the money.
No.
Because you're used to a nice big paycheck. It wasn't an issue.
Yeah, you'd be so surprised about how little you need to leave. You know, I mean, often I take trips to the Eastern Cape and whatever, to very rural parts, and you see what human life requires not much, you know.
Yeah. So money's never been the motivating force for you. Trudy, where would you say were the big stepping stones for you, the big changes in your life? Was it leaving the Competition Commission? Was that a wrench for you, realizing I'm now going to plunge myself into a whole new career, a new dimension? Because ultimately the fundamentals were the same. You had a reputation which was well established. Surely that would have been an easy safety net to allow you to embark on something new.
It was a safety net, but also I suppose the reputation comes with a lot of job offers, which obviously, having decided I want to go on my own, were very tempting and can be a distraction. So, you know, you get offered amazing jobs that you have, well, that I felt I have to turn down. And so that for me, I think was the greatest difficulty in leaving the commission, in that, you know, I left and I was clear that I'm no longer going to belong to, you know, a big institution. I'm not going to work for anyone for a foreseeable future. And so I'm not going to accept any jobs. And I guess you get pigeonholed. I mean, the other day, actually, at ENCA, someone discovered that I literally do have 5 degrees. And they were like, but you should work for a Fortune 500 company. You know, there was this idea that this is what you should do. And it's very strong in South Africa, where we have that culture, you know, that. And I suppose we also do have a skills shortage. I must acknowledge that. Where it's felt that, you know, if you choose this path, this is where it should lead to. And if it doesn't lead, you know, on that path, you know, something must have gone wrong. No one ever thinks it's a choice that you want to explore something different. So it was quite a challenge to leave the commission. Of course, also being known to be pursuing those, you know, some of the issues the commission deals with, I was very passionate about.
Yes.
So that was also difficult, because it's not as if I had stopped believing in what the commission was doing. It's just that the environment wasn't just right for me anymore. It's almost like I had outgrown it, or had changed in a way that was incompatible with what the commission was or was becoming. And so I had to leave, but I still wanted to be involved in the issues. I still wanted to talk about them. So there's also that aspect that, you know, you want to leave, but it's very difficult to have a clean break.
Yes.
You still want to be involved. And so you have to find ways to make it smooth for yourself, you know, keeping in touch with old colleagues, keeping in touch with same issues, if it's appropriate for your circumstances. You know, in some instances, if you're going to do something radically different, that's no longer a possibility. Of course, the people who remain, some of them also want to leave. And so that also becomes difficult. You know, they start treating you differently because you've done this big leap. That they look at and say, oh, but you know, how dare she? in a sense, which suggests a bit of envy, that perhaps if they had the same courage or the same circumstances, you know, they would have done the same. So that also, you know, creates a bit of awkwardness.
I'm interested in you talk about courage. Do you find, Katherine, for you, as you look and explore new worlds, that courage is an issue for you? Because I would like to think of, well, possibly with Loopy as well, you really live a dream. And I'm always a little skeptical when people say, if you're not finding joy in your job, live your dream. Whatever you dream big and go and do those things. And I think, well, that's actually massive risk taking. I'm all for passion and living a dream. But if the dream's not a reality, I mean, I'd love to be in the Springbok team. I'm putting them right now. That's just nonsense to believe something, dream something like that. Do you look at these things like dream the big dream and have courage to believe in yourself as motivating forces?
I do, and I'll share a story with you. I currently work at a corporate, Prime Media, on Lead SA, and I've decided that there's a calling and there's something I'm very passionate about. It is a story that found me. Earlier this year, and I went to Algeria, and I went and stayed in a refugee camp on the Moroccan and Algerian border, living amongst the Sahrawi people who have been there since 1975. Now, I felt so rightly placed when I was living in the refugee camp. I felt as if my soul was being fed, because I was able to understand a people that had been forgotten, and I was able to understand the plight of these people without just being told about them, reading about them. And I've decided that it takes a lot of risk, courage, and bravery. Firstly, I went into a place that is very dangerous, and I was told by numerous government officials not to go into this camp. However, I decided to do it. I'm now going to leave the corporate world, and I'm going to continue to go back to this refugee camp, and I'm going to go and live amongst these people and try to assist them in their basic living, because there's a fight there that needs to be fought. And these people don't know about social media, something very basic. So I'm going to go back to the camps and I'm going to teach them how they can be sharing their stories.
That is incredible. You're going to give up this career path that you've got, and it's been very successful for you. And I mean, I'd follow your social media postings. You have a very good life, a lovely life, a comfortable life, a glamorous life, as befits somebody who is Miss Earth. You're saying, forget all of that. The refugee camp is my calling.
Absolutely.
And that's going to give you joy in your job.
That gives me joy. That fills me and allows me to do all the other things. So I need to go and submerge myself again. And that continual travel back and forth between here and the refugee camps and the Sahrawi people feeds who I am and allows me to do everything else I do. So I've decided that this is something that's very important for me. So come the beginning of next year, I'll be going back to stay in the camps for a while. And I think that it's important that you mentioned it. If you find something you're passionate about and you do everything, you find the courage inside of you to follow that passion and that calling, everything else will fall into place. There's absolutely no money that will be gained. No one's going to even pay me to go there. But this is something I have to do for me, because in 10 years' time, if I wake up, I have to answer to me, and I have to go to bed with my own conscience. And if I'm not doing what I love and what I'm passionate about and what feeds my soul, then there's a huge problem.
No, I hear you. I gave up a career in journalism to go and study law at the age of 30, practiced law and found I didn't really enjoy it. And I had to really answer the question in my own head whether I'd wasted my time and my money, because I had to fund myself. And the answer was no, because of exactly what you've just said. I didn't want to wake up 10 years down the line to go, I never actually tried it.
Yes.
Who knows? It might have worked. I might have been a lawyer today, but I didn't like it. But I tried. At least I tried it.
Exactly.
And I learned more out of that experience, as will you. But has it been a soul-searching time for you to realize that you want to do this and not stay on the career path that you've got?
You know, I think it's been part of the journey, because I've had amazing opportunities to live amongst people in very different kinds of environments. I lived in the slums in Cambodia for 2.5 years, amongst those people, to build a community development project that would take children off of the border, take them off of begging for $1 a day. And living amongst those people has taught me so much about myself and what I want out of life and what kind of legacy I want to leave. Because it's not about what is perceived as the glamorous lifestyle you live, but what you're able to achieve because of those platforms you're given. And for me, that's really important. So finding the Sahrawi people found me. I never knew they even existed before the beginning of this year. And I feel a duty to do something about something that I know something about. And I think that that is, for me, something that's so critical. I will come back and continue doing the work that I do, and I will still continue trying to keep all the different balls in the air. But if I don't do this, I will have an issue with who I am.
One last question on this before I move to Loopy to get his take on how, where the courage is required. Do you feel you're taking an enormous risk? Do you see it like that?
I'm absolutely taking an enormous risk. The areas I'm going to and the work that I do, and not only now with the Sahrawi people, but I've gone and I've worked in areas where there's conflict, areas where there are humanitarian crises, and I found myself in situations where an 18-year-old girl should never find herself in. I was part of a human trafficking syndicate in Egypt 10 years ago. And that taught me to be brave from a very young age. And that bravery comes from deep within. And if you don't believe that you're brave, no one else can believe that. And that courage does lie within all of us. It's just how your journey sort of takes you to find that courage. And I think that for me, courage, risk, and bravery are wrapped up and are part of the beautiful lessons of life.
Well, the life lessons you've learned, very few people have learned. Loopy out there, I'm thinking you, the brave one, going to live in Ponty. You've got to go into human trafficking, quite frankly, to belong on this couch. But Loopy, for you, when you think about making your career changes, and if anybody who's not finding joy in their job wants to move but feels they lack the courage, how critical is that courage? Did you feel that there was risk taking when you decided to change your careers?
Absolutely, without a doubt. But I think there's two elements to what I want to say. The first one is, if you're looking at it like a job, then you're probably doing it wrong, because I don't see it as a job. I just see it as like living my life the way that I want to, putting my time into projects that I think are important, and having the great perspective of understanding people on a much deeper level, which gives you a lot of like internal courage as well. But I think most importantly is that there's never a right time to do anything. You can never, there's like, if you think that there's a formula that says that, okay, you're in your corporate job at this time, once you receive this promotion and you're earning this much money and you have this much disposable income, it will never be like that, because at some stage you up your lifestyle and your level of living a little bit, and you go on overseas trips and you want to impress your wife or your girlfriend and you buy them things or whatever, you know, and then all of a sudden you feel as if you're not ready anymore. So there's never a right time. It's always the right time to go and do something like that. And I believe the courage comes from, just more than anything, having the courage to be who you truly are as a human being. And
sometimes you don't know when that has arrived. And I think of myself, where I was stuck doing a radio show that I absolutely hated, but believed that I was part of this radio station that I couldn't ever leave, until I started doing more TV work and suddenly realizing the world's a lot bigger than this radio station. But it took a long time for me to realize that.
Yeah, I know. Just like Trudy was saying as well, I mean, the stuff that you get with like people offering you jobs and things like that are incredibly difficult to turn down because of the monetary aspects and whatever.
Yeah.
But what you're really giving up is your freedom and your time, you know, and working for someone, which can be really cool. You know, I know tons of people, especially in the creative industry, that are doing what they want to do and they're working for people. But like, you know, you've got to be able to realize your own worth, you know, and you've got to be able to realize the fact that you have more to offer than the job that you're applying for. So I'm by no means sitting here saying that I have all the answers. I'm still on my journey, and I'm learning a lot every single day. So I wouldn't even regard myself as a success. All I've really done is just kind of take the leap into this uncertainty, had the courage to do it, and I'm still learning along the way. So I suppose even surrounding yourself with people who are influential in your life, and people who are important, and people who are you know, always hang out with people that are smarter than you, I always say, you know, to like kind of to get the perspective as well, you know, and that kind of gives you a little bit of you know, courage to do things and whatever, because you see other people have done them. You know, I'm incredibly lucky. I've got Robert Brosen as like a business mentor for me. He's the founder of Nando's.
Yes.
And you know, a lot of the chats that we have around courage and around leadership and things like that all revolve around being who you are. And, you know, I'm incredibly fascinated by the way that he does business, because it's all based on honesty and it's all based on doing the right thing. There's no like need for lawyers and you know, to get involved. And
he'll do a deal on a handshake.
Exactly.
I was amazed that still existed in this day and age. Big deals. Let's just shake on it. Now we understand what we're doing, and off we go. And that's Robbie Brosen. You look at Nando's now. He's an incredible role model. Well, I think if I'm going to hang around with people cleverer than me, I'll hang around with you guys, especially somebody with 5 degrees. Trudy, I want to go to a question here from Joseph, who says, I became a software engineer because I knew I would always have a job with this qualification. Hating it though and pushing 40, didn't know where to start making a change. I think we're touching on these things where you don't want to be pigeonholed. So what kind of advice would you be having there for Joseph? He's got the degree. He feels because he's done it, he's got to be an engineer.
Look, I mean, that's incredibly important for me anyway, because if it wasn't for my education, I feel as though I've got this like really warm, fuzzy feeling inside of the safety net. So if everything screws up, you know, I can always go back to a consultancy and kind of pick up the pieces and find my feet again. So the fact that you've gone on and become a software engineer and whatever is incredible. You're already a step ahead of like most people that have started from nothing. So
if he wants to go and join a band, are you going to say to him, well, maybe that's a little too off the wall?
No, why? Why is it off the wall?
No, I'm glad you said that. Because you don't want to wake up 10 years' time saying, I really should have tried to be in the band.
Because if being in a band is something that you really enjoy doing and something that you look forward to all the time, and when you walk out of there, you feel revitalized and energized because you've laughed, you spent time with people that you wanted to spend with, why is that wrong? Even if you're not making money.
Because as you said, you went for that enormous salary cut.
Yeah.
I just think that your personal journey is now so far down the line that for you to become a an auditor or a consultant, you couldn't do it
I'll
anymore.
leave it for the birds. Eh?
Yeah, I just don't think, I think your head has moved on so fundamentally. But Trudy, for you, when you think about the moment when you decided, I'm now going to leave, you, with your qualifications, with your expertise, with your contacts, why did you've chosen a portfolio of careers, haven't you? Why did you choose that option to go, well, let me go for a media profile, let me go for an advisory, set up my own company? Because you had so many other offers that you could easily have taken.
I think there's the issue of controlling your own time, but also marrying creativity with the analytical skills. So, I mean, you know, I was always frustrated that I couldn't really write. I couldn't find the time to write while I was still in all of the jobs. I also did consulting at Deloitte, you know, filling timesheets. I really couldn't have time.
Nobody wants to fill that time.
No,
that's why I hated law.
You go and it's one of those things of like, okay, now you've got to submit the timesheet, and there's certain, like, what do they call it? Utilization.
Yes.
So you have to meet these targets of like being, like, depending on where you are structured in the entity, you'd have to meet these targets. And me, I was writing a lot of thought leaderships and doing authorized projects, like all sorts of other stuff that always come to me, like, why were you 5% utilized this week? And I'd be like, I don't know, but I hear your frustrations.
It's also out of your control half the time. If the company's not doing well and the economy is not doing well, you're like 50% utilized, but you're also not doing the writing that you want to do. So I think part of me was just not being able to do the things that I want to do. But back to the engineer, let's say, who wants to become a band member. I think you also have to think practically about how you create a path out of what you're doing. And you don't also have to do exactly the ultimate dream of being in a rock band immediately. So for instance, I mean, for someone like that, I would suggest, you know, you're a software engineer. You have skills that are actually quite useful in the music and entertainment industry from a different angle. You could still be in music, but you could be creating, you know, music sharing software. You could actually become a billionaire, you know, running a startup that helps artists, you know, recording, you know, Audacity, those sorts of software. I mean, that's software, you know. You could be helping people record their music and eventually perhaps, you know, become a band member yourself. But I think there's a way of being around the areas that you're passionate about.
So
I mean,
don't turf the entire career.
Exactly. So
it's
a journey.
Okay. Make it part of a journey.
Even I'm still writing, I'm on TV, but ultimately I'd want to be involved far more in the media, possibly even as an entrepreneur. But I can't start there. So, I mean, I did start, you know, sitting at ENCA, writing little pieces online, you know, doing extremely basic entry-level work, despite the 5 degrees, just to be around the industry that ultimately I want to pivot into. And making it, you know, kind of low risk. So still, you know, getting, you know, gigs related to what I can do, skills that people appreciate. They're like, okay, we're a media house, you know, economics, come and tell us more about that. So I think that there are ways to create, you know, pathways that soften the landing so that you don't go from, you know, your paycheck to nothing. You know, there's a whole range of intermediate steps that can mean that even someone with a family, you know, if they could make it work, could make the leap.
Let's go to another question. Michelle says, what if I'm unhappy but not sure what my passion is? I don't have the money, time, or resources to make a change. Catherine, can you field that one?
I think for me, the important thing is there that Michelle really needs to go on a journey where she decides for herself, what are the things that she loves? What are the things that feed her? Because there she will find her passion. So obviously she can't leave her job. She doesn't have the, you know, she said so. She doesn't like her job, but doesn't know where she wants to go. She needs to really put pen to paper, put down all the things she loves doing, all the things that fill her, that make her feel that she's
make you feel alive.
Absolutely. She, you know, what is it that she does on a weekend perhaps that really excites her? Does she like being around people? Does she like doing certain extreme sports perhaps? Find what it is you're passionate about. It's a pity we don't know what exactly she does do, but I think when you understand for yourself the things you're passionate about, you'll find your purpose. And then you can find, how do you use your purpose and passion to infiltrate the job space that you're in?
Yeah.
So don't just give up where you are. Find a way to utilize your strengths in the space that you're in, so that that time in that space that you're in can be more fulfilling to who you are.
When I was thinking about leaving radio, which had been my life for 30 years, I had a chat to Rita Landman, who had left about the time she had left Carte Blanche. And it was such a massive change. It was such a big shock to the public. Rita was all part of our lives on a Sunday. And we had a chat about these things. And she gave me a line which at the time sounded very trite. But the more I remember it and look at the way things panned out for me, the more I realized it was true, because I didn't know what to do. And she said, you just step into the void. Let the bridge come up to meet you.
Yeah.
And I thought, I can't do that. But I had to, because I knew what I was doing gave me absolutely no joy. So I thought, well, let me step into the void. And it's amazing, the bridge does come up to meet you, but you've got to have that confidence. You don't have that confidence, you can't take the step.
That's exactly what Catherine was saying now. I have to agree 100%. But I think the advice that I would give Michal, and this is something that I've learned personally, is always, every single day of your life, do something that scares you. Because that's where the magic happens, you know? I swear to you, that's exactly where the magic happens. The whole of Vietnam, from the south to the north.
Oh, beautiful.
Solo adventure. And it was scary, hey? Like, I cut myself, you know? When you leave, you know, and you've got to deal with all these things, and you know, you meet incredible people and you gain such amazing perspective, and you learn so much about yourself, which is the most important thing. How can you find out what you want to do if you don't truly know who you are?
So,
you know what I mean?
Unfortunately for Michal, she said she didn't have the resources, but wouldn't that be a fabulous opportunity to just cash in the chips? You go on some long soul-searching journey.
I don't know if she works for a big company, it might be that there are things that she loves but are not her job. So she could volunteer in marketing if she thinks that's where her passion is, even though her job is in, you know, systems. So I think there's always an opportunity to volunteer, to kind of make a sacrifice in terms of your time and earnings while you're getting the experience, just to suss out whether that next step is the right thing to do. So I don't think it only boils down to resources, because I think sometimes you can find ways to still stay where you are, but expand your horizons.
So you still got that safety net of the paycheck, of the full-time employment.
But you're learning something new all the time.
And then at some stage you might say, well, I've developed, I know where my passion is, I can go and explore it elsewhere. Another question from Tembi saying, is there any way I can be happy if I don't like my job? I would have to say no. You can't. If you don't like your job, you can't be happy. You've really got to make a change.
It's that basic. I think you need to wake up every day, or my dream for everyone, because I believe you have to wake up every day and love what you do. You said you shouldn't be going and doing your job. You should be going and living in the space where you, unfortunately, most of us live where we work. Most of our time is occupied in an office or amongst people where we're employed. So you need to love that space. You need to love your job, because if you don't, you start to die as a person. You are not fulfilled, and I think that impacts your environment, the people that you live with, the people that you surround yourself with. You need to find your positive energy, and if it's not in that job, there are so many other jobs out there.
Well, I had a very interesting experience before coming here. I went to Home Affairs to get my passport renewed, and there were people there just in their body language who were loathing their jobs, and there were some women behind the counters, engaging, friendly, smiling, who were loving their jobs. I just kept thinking, please let me go to one of those counters, which I did. And so the service was good. I thought, they're all doing the same job, but those people, it's killing them. And those people are thriving. I could just see it in the body language.
In our economy, though, I mean, I think our history and our economy will mean that lots of people are in jobs that they don't like, either because they didn't have opportunities to study, etc. So they literally take the job that they're given, especially if it's an entry level or a frontline job like that. It could have been completely random. That's what's available. So I think there has to, we also have to, take that into account, that a lot of people will be in jobs they're not passionate about, but they could do other things. So they could be studying, for instance, part-time, outside working hours, even if it's not to get the next job, but to at least position themselves to be in a, to be able to take up a job in the desired field of study at some point. I think getting involved in community activities. So you might be in a job that you don't like, but on the weekends or whatever, you're involved in politics or climate change or environmental initiatives in your community that give you energy that you can face that terrible job. Because it just might not be realistic for you to get out of it. And I think to also see a job for what it is, you know, put it in the proper place in your life. If you're a employed person who's doing a job to get their kids to school, to live, to see it not as you. It's not necessarily, you know, what you do doesn't have to be the sum total of who you are. You have your relationships, you have your spirituality, you have so many other avenues to express yourself that, you know, I think we've become workaholics. You know, in general,
does that to you,
Joburg does that too. But I think we also have to kind of, you know, hold back and say, actually, this is not going to consume me. I'm going to be in the office, you know, do my job, but it's not everything to me. And I think that that's an important perspective to keep in mind, even when you're passionate about your job, or especially if you're passionate, because you could work, you know, 22 hours, not see your family, etc. So I think you do have to have boundaries.
See, also, I also believe that, you know, you as a human being, you'll always be a product of what you put out. So if you are going to be negative about your job, and if you're going to hate it, and if you're going to hate your colleagues, and you hate your home life, you know, then all of those, I'm a firm believer in energy around you, you know. If you put forward good energy, like for instance, when you were saying, you know, the time that you have spare, that you study over the weekends and whatever, what you're doing on top of studying is you're identifying other opportunities in that field, because now all of a sudden you have something more to talk about when you go out and you meet new people. So what do? Okay, I've got a crappy job, but I'm studying this on the side. Oh, is it? How long have you got to go? Oh, no, I'm in my last year and whatever. You know, when you're done, give me a call.
Yeah.
You know, and if you had never done that, if you had never put yourself out there, those opportunities would have never been there. So I suppose there's a massive danger in complacency and like being, okay, this is it, and this is what it's going to be, because every human has the potential to do whatever they like, you know. And you are the master of your own destiny at the end of the day.
Well, unbelievably, our time is up. It really feels like we're only halfway through the session, but we have, I hope, given a lot of people a lot of advice, some good food for thought, and I'd like to thank all of you and wish you well, Catherine, on the most remarkable of adventures and learning experiences.
I'm so jealous, eh?
But you sound like you've lived a few lives already before you were even 18 years old. So Catherine Constantinides, all the best to you. Loopy, Luptak, what you're doing for Joburg in the city, I think is mind-boggling, and long may that continue, that social entrepreneurship that you're involved in. And thank you for your time. And to you, Trudy Micaiah, well, I love the fact that you're delving in the media space right now, and that I hear this little bell ringing when you say you want to become a media entrepreneur. I'm thinking, yeah, MultiChoice needs to look out, because Trudy Micaiah is on. Yeah, Trudy Micaiah is on her way. Thank you to all three of you. And thank you to you for watching as well. And we look forward to your company again on the Change Exchange. From me, David O'Sullivan, goodbye.